today, I spoke with the family of Breonna Taylor. This morning, they were informed that the Justice Department has charged 4 current and former Louisville Metro Police Department officers with federal crimes related to Ms. Taylor's death. Those alleged crimes include civil rights offenses, unlawful conspiracies, unconstitutional use of force, and obstruction offenses. The 4 defendants were charged through 2 separate indictments and 1 information. I'm going to begin today by discussing the civil rights offenses that stem from the falsification of a search warrant. We allege that these offenses resulted in Ms. Taylor's death.
Thank you so much for joining us for KVUE News at 5 on this Wednesday afternoon. I'm Brian Mays.
And I'm Ashley Goodo. Today, Governor Greg Abbott announced a plan to handle an expected influx at the U.S.-Mexico border, including sending migrants from Texas to Washington, D.C.
Now, this comes in response to the Biden administration ending Title 42 next month, which has allowed the U.S. to limit asylum seeker intake during this pandemic.
Texas will be taking its own unprecedented actions this month to do what no state in America has ever done in the history of this country to better.
The governor said today he's directing the Texas Department of Emergency Management to use charter buses to take migrants from Texas to Washington, D.C. A reporter asked the governor where the migrants would end up in D.C.
Is there a place in D.C. that you all are planning to send these migrants to? Is there a designated area you guys have in this plan?
The first location will be the steps of the United States Capitol. The Biden administration, as we speak, with the current numbers, even before the elimination of Title 42, they've been dumping large numbers of migrants in cities up and down the border, leaving the cities to grapple with challenges they don't have the capability of dealing with. They themselves have been putting these migrants on buses to San Antonio. So I said I got a better idea. As opposed to busing these people to San Antonio, let's continue the ride all the way to Washington, D.C.
The governor also ordering DPS to enhance safety inspections of vehicles crossing the border. The governor says he expects things to slow things down at points of entry. He's also deploying boat blockades in the Rio Grande and other deterrents like razor wire at low water crossings. Governor Abbott said this is not the end of efforts to handle border security. He said we can expect more announcements coming next week. Now, we reached out to the White House for comment on Governor Abbott's criticism of President Biden's border policies, but we have yet to hear back.
Now, these changes, of course, are coming as Texas Military Department officials say they need more money to continue Operation Lone Star. It's the governor's effort to use state resources, DPS troopers, and the National Guard for border enforcement. The leader for the Texas Military Department told lawmakers yesterday they need another $531 million to keep the mission running past May 1st.
With sometimes a new report found it's worse in Texas prisons. The study found units regularly reach 110 degrees and at least one unit has topped 149 degrees. Because of that, dying from heat is a common fear among inmates. It was done by Texas A&M's Reduction and Recovery Center and surveyed 309 incarcerated people across the state of Texas between June 2018 and 2020. So it doesn't even include this summer's brutal temperatures. It found only 30% of Texas prison units are fully air conditioned, and Texas is one of 13 states that does not have any kind of universal air conditioning in state prisons. Earlier this month, researchers who worked on the report spoke before the Texas House Committee of Appropriations, pushing for the installation of climate control equipment in state prisons.
Extreme heat disproportionately impacts incarcerated people with medical and mental health vulnerabilities, but can also create them in previously healthy persons. Such vulnerabilities are overrepresented in prison systems across the U.S. and in Texas. This issue is only going to continue to worsen with increasing annual temperatures and an increasing number of days over 100 degrees in Texas.
Back in 2017, inmates at one Texas prison filed a lawsuit, and in the settlement, a U.S. district judge in Houston said the Texas prison system was, quote, deliberately indifferent, end quote, to heat risk, and inmates were subjected to a substantial risk of serious injury or death. After that, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, or TDC, TDCJ created formal policies to provide relief to inmates, like providing water and ice, adding cool-down areas, and allowing inmates to purchase things like fans or towels. But this new report says these policies don't work and rely on the overworked prison employees who are also suffering from the heat. Clifton Buchanan is a retired correctional officer of 26 years. He says staff have to endure the heat while wearing safety equipment like stab-proof vests.
Staff are required to conduct security checks every 30 minutes, which requires them to go up and down staircases. Imagine going up and down stairs at a football stadium in the heat of the day while wearing a coat.
The TDCJ previously claimed it would cost $1 billion to install air conditioning across all units, with an additional $140 million needed every year for utilities and maintenance.
Report from the Texas Tribune details the dire situation happening inside the Texas Juvenile Prison system. Teenagers reportedly spending up to 23 hours a day locked in their cells. Jolie McCullough, criminal justice reporter for the Texas Tribune, is joining us to share what she's learned. Jolie, thank you for taking time to talk with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You describe the juvenile prison system as being on the brink of collapse. Big picture, tell us what is happening.
Yeah, so the Texas Juvenile Justice Department has 5 state-run prisons for teenagers, essentially, who, and they have long been in crisis. Generally speaking, it's hard for them to keep people employed working in these prisons. Following the pandemic and this, quote, great resignation, where people have been leaving their jobs, they're left with a startlingly low number of officers who are able to supervise these children. And as a result, as what you said, you're seeing kids who are locked in their cells for up to 23 hours a day. These are cells that don't have bathrooms, so kids have reported having to use water bottles as toilets. Suicidal behavior has skyrocketed, which is obviously very concerning for any young people who are in the state's care.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about it, but I want you to describe for us the living conditions that some of these teenagers are reporting, particularly what it's like for them being in these cells. These are not, nice cells, frankly.
Yeah, so these are really big campuses. There's 5 campuses, and they're mostly in rural places around the state. So generally speaking, there's dorms and cells, and so each child has their own cell, which is really just, maybe a bookshelf that's mounted to the wall and a concrete block with a very thin mattress on it. Not all of them have windows to the outside. And so that's really all it is this very cramped space, and they are in there for a lot of the time, especially on the weekends, because what is happening is they're using teachers and caseworkers to fill in for officer positions. But since those roles they're not there on the weekends. On weekends, a lot of the time you're seeing these teens left in their cells.
When I think folks hear this, teens spending 23 hours a day having to use water bottles as restrooms, that's just completely unacceptable. What is the plan? What are you hearing?
Yeah, so the agency was able to, because they have so many unfilled positions, they were able to implement a 15% raise for all the security staff that is currently working there. And they're hoping that can kind of keep people there a little bit longer, can maybe bring a few more people in. Of course, that goes from a starting salary from about $36,000 to about a little less than $42,000. And, other than that, there hasn't been that much talk. I reached out to the governor's office. I asked if this was something worth consideration of a special session. They did not respond to that question, simply saying that, the governor supports the agency and it continues to be a priority for him. But it's unclear in terms of what we do now. It seems like it's still up to the agency at this point.
Wow. Jolie, we know you will continue to follow this story. We thank you for taking time to talk with us today.
Thank you.
Peers Texas's crime spares no one, not even a police officer is safe. Take a look at this surveillance video. It shows a gunman approaching a 23-year-old rookie cop. The officer is backing up, but the gunman continues to move in. Being held at gunpoint, the officer's service weapon, wallet with cash, his keys and badge are all stolen. It was just after midnight Tuesday when the officer parked his car here near Garrison Avenue and Barretto Street in Hunts Point. People who live and work in the area can't believe an officer turned victim.
Oh wow, that's crazy. I don't think we're safe anymore. I really don't.
The officer is assigned to the 47th precinct in the Bronx. He had just finished a 4 to midnight shift. He headed home, parked his car, and was trying to get his bag out of the trunk when the gunman approached him. Sources tell Pix 11 News he grabbed the officer's service weapon right from the holster on his waistband, then forcibly removed the officer's valuables, including his badge. What happened to the officer is happening more often in the city. So far this year, there have been more than 9,500 robberies compared to about 6,800 during the same time period in 2021. It's almost a 40% increase. Back at the scene where the officer was robbed, police spent hours looking for clues. With the officer's gun and badge in the wrong hands, police and the community are very concerned.
There's too many things happening. First, a cop getting into a fight in the train station. It's like, now, who's going to protect the cops?
In a statement, PBA President Pat Lynch said, "We are thankful that our brother is okay, but this situation could have ended much worse. Not even the sight of a gun and shield will deter these brazen perps."